Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate Star Wars through music and sound, 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, and today's episode is based on minutes 51 through 55 of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. In this set of minutes, Luke teaches Rey a lesson about the Force. She goes straight to the dark side. Connix nods at Poe while they sneak around Holdo. Rey and Kylo have a brief Force chat. Finn and Rose discuss the Canto Bight plan, and finally, we arrive on Canto Bight. I have a special guest today. This is percussionist Tyler Hunt, who played the steel pan drums on the score, specifically in the Canto Bight cues. Hello, Tyler.
Hey there.
I'm super excited to have you. You were a specific request.
Guess I'm the right man for the job on this one.
You're literally the only person only person who could fulfill this request of get the steel pan drummer from the Canto Bight scene. Only one correct answer, and it's you.
Great.
Where do we even start? Well, first of all, you're a Star Wars fan, in addition to just being someone who was lucky enough to play on the score.
I'm like a mid-level fan, not like I know there's various tiers. No. Mid to lower mid tier.
I don't think the tiers thing. No, all fans are welcome. I just hate fan gatekeeping. It's yeah. So first of all, do you want to say anything about the minutes before leading up to your part? Because we have so many places we can start. Let's.
Not really.
Okay.
I don't have a lot to say. Maybe you have some stuff to say about it, but I don't personally.
Let's start right on Canto Bight then.
Okay,
and
sure.
and then at the end, I'll recap like the themes that we heard before, just to keep track of all the themes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time since the original Cantina Band that the steel pan drums have been used. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. Although, actually, John Williams was considering adding the steel pan to the movie before this one on The Force Awakens, and they had actually originally asked me to see if I was available and interested, and of course I said I was, and then nothing really came of it.
Oh, so you were asked to do The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that maybe it was, I forget the name of the planet, but it's where they go to that bar. And what's her name with the huge eyes is where they meet her there.
Oh, Maz's castle. It's funny. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So it's kind of, the music is kind of like this reggae sort of vibe, and it's, it's reminiscent of the Cantina Band. So I don't know if John Williams was thinking maybe he wanted it there, and then I don't know what happened. And then, a year or two, whatever went by, and then they called me again, and I was like, yes.
Wow. Did you know it was Star Wars when they asked you? Before?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Often those things don't really come back around. I know what it's like being a musician or like being in entertainment when you think you have an opportunity and then it's like, oh, never mind, but like we'll keep you in mind and next time it comes up. It doesn't
it was
always
totally
come
out
up.
Of the blue the second time. I was just like hanging out with my friend and I got a call and it went to voicemail and I listened to it and then I was like, oh my gosh, I need to call this number back.
Wow. Did you feel any pressure?
Yeah. I had no idea what the music was going to be like. I basically was recommended by Greg Goodall, who is a longtime studio percussionist. He played timpani on like the original Star Wars. He was playing on these new ones, and he had been a coach of mine in an ensemble that I was playing in at Cal State Long Beach when I was doing my master's there. So he knew me, and he'd seen me perform a steel pan solo that's a very challenging solo that I was preparing for my recital. So I think he kind of knew my work ethic, steel pan ability, etc. And, at the time, all these percussionists who were on the gig already, John Williams says, hey, I want a steel pan part. And all the guys are like, I don't really do that. So they thought, okay, well, is there somebody who actually plays this instrument and, can play what we write and, get it done?
That's interesting. I was wondering why they didn't just like go with someone who was already there. Is steel
Yeah,
pan is steel pan is it's something not a lot of people play?
yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the top tier studio guys, they'll play just about anything. Obviously they can play all the orchestral percussion, and they can do the drum set, and mallet percussion, and to a certain degree hand percussion. But steel pan's definitely one of the more niche types of percussion out there, and especially on I would say like a higher level of playing, not just like what you would think of as kind of the, I don't know, casual backyard Caribbean kind of vibe.
Yeah, I
You
got
know.
you. Yeah. I figure steel pan and a lot of probably auxiliary percussion instruments are sort of something a lot of people have dabbled in maybe as part of their
hmm
training, but never really fleshed it out. Is it your main instrument?
Um, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. So, I steel pan is something that I have gotten pretty deep into as far as like my time and work. Not necessarily, a lot of times it's like drum set is going to get you the gig, and or just playing kind of general for percussion for like a wedding band, or stuff like that. So in a way, yes, it is kind of one of my main things, but it's not necessarily like what I do mostly for work per se.
So cool though that you got to play on this score. Um, can you explain what steel pan drums are?
Yeah, so the steel pan is really interesting because, according to some people, they would classify it as the only new acoustic instrument that was developed in the 20th century. So that could be debatable, but I think that that's a really cool idea in that, at the time it was like a totally new thing. Now there's those kind of like dome things, the hand pans or the hong drums that are kind of similar, but the history of the steel pan is super interesting because it was developed in the Caribbean on the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you're not familiar with those, they are the southernmost islands in the chain of islands that go down the Caribbean. So they're basically just off the coast of Venezuela. And it was a former British colony, and I'll try and make it short, but basically, the British were repressing the people who were primarily from Africa, who were former slaves, and their sort of traditional forms of music were being kind of tamped down by the British, and so they were getting really creative with ways to try and express themselves and create outlets. And so, in kind of the early part of the 20th century, they had these bands where they had a bunch of like found metal objects, and they would put these big ensembles together, and they'd be hitting on brake drums and old trash cans and biscuit containers and like all kinds of found objects. And at some point they started to find that they could kind of get some different sounds out of some of these as they were beated repeatedly. And Trinidad was an important fuel hub in World War II because there's a bunch of oil there. And so what ended up happening was there was tons of empty 55-gallon oil barrels. And so over time, they started turning these into instruments. And the technique for creating them kept developing. And so it started out as this pretty primitive thing. And then they started to get more sophisticated to the point where they ended up fully chromatic. And, they were tuning them with a strobe tuner tuned, to the same way that a piano or any other Western instrument would be tuned. And then they started playing all kinds of different music, and it sort of evolved from there to a modern instrument that is on par with any other modern instrument.
I had no idea about that history.
Super
Wow.
fascinating. It
Yeah.
goes pretty deep. Yeah.
So the name is almost literal in like steel pans, like finding stuff. I mean, not anymore
Yeah.
necessarily, but
I mean, who knows? I mean, the instrument I have here is a custom instrument that's oversized, so it was made out of a particular oversized barrel. But I mean, a lot of the pans that you get are made out of 55-gallon drums that had canola oil or food or like whatever oil. And I mean, they're literally taking a 55-gallon barrel and turning it into like a beautiful, fully chromatic, equal temperament musical instrument.
wow. Okay, so chromatic, by chromatic you just mean like Like there are separate notes on it that go in order
Hmm.
like a piano. Yeah.
Yeah.
And equal temperaments basically tuned like a piano.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So for those who don't know what that is, just means there's equal space between the notes. It's basically like a piano, but with drums.
Just yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So when people refer to the steel pan drums, w- a single instrument is the plural, drums. It's a set of multiple
So this
drums
is
or
it gets a little tricky. So, you know, the steel pan experts would say that when it's a barrel, it's a steel drum. That's just a generic name for a steel barrel. When it's turned into the instrument, that's when it becomes a steel pan.
okay.
So that's kind of like, the absolute correct terminology. The steel pan, steel pans. Steel drums, not quite as good, um, but some people still say that it's not a big deal. But that's the correct terminology because you have to differentiate, you know, because just the
For
raw
sure.
barrel would be called a steel drum. So,
For sure. But steel pan drums implies that you will show up with multiple steel pan drums, not just like one on the note A
well,
or
so
something.
that gets into which instrument you're playing
Oh,
because
okay.
there are many, many different versions. And so you can think of this as being analogous to the way that an orchestra is, in that you have the basses, the cellos, the violas, the violins. It's a similar phenomenon with steel pan where you have bass pans that are literally an entire 55-gallon drum with only 3 notes on it because the notes are huge, and you have like 6 of those to give you fully chromatic notes. And then it starts moving up. So then you have tenor bass that are a little bit smaller, and you have 4 full ones. Then you have 4 pans or celli pans, as they're referred to, that come in 4 3-note configurations that are a low mid range. Then you have seconds, 2 pans that are even higher, and then the highest one's the tenor pan, which is a single pan instrument. So they have these huge orchestras in Trinidad that are like 100-person, literally orchestras that play crazy, crazy music with all these different configurations of instruments, just the way like a Western orchestra would work.
Oh, did you use your own set on in this recording?
No,
What did
I
you
did
use?
not because at the time, so I primarily play the tenor pan, which is the highest one,
How many
and
pans is that? Or
so it's just one.
oh, oh,
So because basically, when notes are really low, like if they're way in the bass register, the notes are big. They're like this big. When you get to the very highest register, they're like this big. So let me just show you, for example.
okay.
So let's see if I can kind of get this right here. Okay.
Okay, so for
So
those
this one's,
listening, we're looking at it looks like it's a silver. How big would you say that is? It's bigger than a head. It's like a watermelon size, maybe.
oh no, it's bigger than that. I
Oh,
mean, you
is
can
it?
see
Okay.
my
Oh,
my
oh,
arm in
that's
here.
huge. Oh, my scale
Yeah,
is
no.
completely off.
yeah,
Oh
no.
my
This is it.
god.
And this,
It's
like I
like
said, this one's
it's like
kind
three
of a
feet diameter.
yeah.
Dude.
So basically, you can see that like these lower notes are bigger, and these higher notes are smaller.
Oh, a lot just crystallized in my mind. So that whole thing, when when you play so a single that whole thing is a single instrument.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Now that so
So
yeah.
I have to confess, I thought it was like Max Rebo style, like you had a multiple separate pans around you. Do you know
Some
what I'm
do. Some
Oh,
do,
some do.
depending on the
Oh my
range.
gosh. Okay.
Because if you think about it, as you go lower in range, the notes are getting bigger and bigger, so you can fit less and less of them. So,
That's
you
what you
know,
mean. Okay.
yeah. So like I said, this one actually has the range of what would be 2 made out of normal sized barrels, but this is made out of an oversized barrel to get everything into one. So, like on what they call doubles, which would be kind of the next one down below the highest ones, each pan is basically a whole tone scale. And so it's like split that way to give you all the notes. Or if you go down below there to the celli, where there's 3 of them, each one is like diminished scale. And so then you put the 3 of those together, and now you have a full chromatic set.
Got it. So one pan, like in the whole tone one pan would be like And the other one would fill in the gaps?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they all have different configurations, and there's they've kind of become standardized over the years. There's some variation, so it just depends. If you're playing in the high register, you just got one. As you move down, you need more and more and more. And in fact, in Trinidad, they get really crazy where the bass players, because they're so spread out around you and you have to move so much, they'll create duplicates, and so they'll create these huge cages where you'll have like 12 full size 50-gallon drums like in a wall all around you, and they're just like all over the place so that they can play these like really fast lines.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, if you really, I mean, I could show you a quick little video clip of like a full steel pan group in Trinidad playing to give
Oh,
you a sense of the size and scope. Can we do that?
I don't know. I've never tried on.
I see the screen share
If you can, sure. I mean,
option.
for those watching on, for those listening on the podcast, I think you'll still be able to hear it, and I'll try to describe what it is. Maybe I'll post a picture in the show notes. But
Let's
I do,
find out.
but I do want to say like the steel pan that he was showing. Um, it's like, okay, imagine a huge salad bowl, a huge silver salad bowl, and each of the notes is like an indentation within that. So it's like it has all these like, I don't know, pock marks. It has all these little indentations within a single bowl
Yeah, and
or
they're so
pan.
what's crazy is the way that they make this is like they start off with a big hammer and they kind of like beat the whole thing down to this general bowl shape, and then they go through with this little hammer and they form out each individual note and then hammer it back, and it goes through this whole process, and then at the very end they do this very fine tuning process with a strobe tuner. So I have to change a setting for this to allow me to do it, but what I can do here is I'll just text you
Oh, okay, okay.
this link real quick, and then perhaps, or I'll just let me just email it to you, and then you can pull it up,
Yeah.
and then because this is some I every time I show this to anybody, they're just like, I literally had no idea um, that anything like this could exist in any form.
I'm so
It's kind
intrigued.
of like and so it's this event called Panorama. So it's like this big government sponsored competition they have. It's like their musical Super Bowl, basically. And you go up and compete. And so actually, this video was of a group that I played with. I competed with them years ago in Trinidad.
Whoa. Okay.
So here, I just said, see
Yeah, I see it.
if you
I
got,
see the email.
So I
Okay.
don't know. See if that'll pop up, and we could just just briefly so that maybe people can see because you'll see all the different size pans there as well.
Yeah. Okay. While I pull that up, let me ask you a couple more questions. Um,
Sure.
this was your first film score, right?
Yeah.
And how did you develop? How was the part developed when you were called in and you met John Williams? I assume. And did he have it all written out? Did you have like a chat?
We had a chat. So because I told him, I said, different pans have different ranges. I kind of want to make sure that the music is going to work, before we go into this. So they said, okay, well, why don't you come in and meet John Williams ahead of time, and you can figure it out. So I got to go on a day when they were recording with the whole orchestra, and when they were done, then I got to meet with John Williams one on one, which was amazing. And I had my little steel pan set up, and he came and checked it out, and I kind of played a little bit for him. And it was funny because I think that in his mind, he's thinking of the steel pan as kind of like this weird off sounding instrument. And,
He is.
to be fair, steel pan has, a lot of times they're kind of rough. The tuning's kind of funky on them. They sound kind of funky. In the era that he was in, it's back in the 70s, and whoever played this in the UK, I don't know. But if you listen to that pan in the Cantina Band, like, it's an old school kind of funky pan. And the pan that I have is like a
What's the
real.
part that like if people because I think a lot of people don't actually know which parts, like what the steel pan sounds like in, like what
So
part, like what
what you
part is it?
yeah, so what you want to do is if you get a hold of the soundtrack and you listen to the end of the Cantina Band song, there's a little kind of solo spot actually where the steel
Oh,
pan kind of,
is it the
and it's a
da
part
da
that you
da
never hear because it's
da
not in the
da da?
movie, but it's in the soundtrack.
Okay, okay. I think I know the part. You're talking about the like
So that's
da 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 da. That part.
yep. Mhm.
Oh,
I
da da
think
da
so.
da 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 da. That part.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
So
Yeah.
in listening back to that one, it's it's kind of an old funky steel pan, and the one I have is it's a really nice one. It's made by a guy in Trinidad named Mappo, who's like a master pan builder. And so I kind of played a little bit of mine, and he was like, "Oh, well, that's much too pretty. I'm thinking of something that sounds a little bit whatever more than that." And I was like, "Well, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out." So he basically wanted to know. Basically, I was going to double some lines that other instruments were playing. I'm doubling lines that like the woodwinds are playing, and so some of those parts are kind of fast, and so there's kind of like this quick little arpeggio. And he said, "Well, can you play a G minor arpeggio really fast?" And I was like, and he's like, "Okay, cool." So I told him, "Look, just write whatever you want, and then I'll just figure it out. I'll get the right steel pans for it, and we'll just do it." I didn't want to feel like he needed to be limited in whatever he was doing. I wanted him to just go for it, and I was just going to suffer the consequences. So that's basically what he did. They sent me the music. They sent me the harder piece.
What's the harder
I
piece?
think like that's the one that comes after the kind of jazzy one.
This one.
That's
Yeah.
not in these minutes.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
but that's okay. Or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So that they sent that one to me about 4 days ahead of the recording session. And so then I got to actually see the part in the range, and I was like, okay, well, I can't play this on my instrument. So I had to borrow my friend's double seconds, and then I just started furiously practicing that part. And then the day before, or 2 days before, they sent me the other one, which is the first part that comes in. It's kind of like the Latin party thing, and that one was easier, so that wasn't as big of a deal.
What's the
Um,
Latin part? Do you mean like the beginning?
the
Got it. Got it. Got it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
You did not
So
have
that's
that
how
much
the
time
part
to
came about.
practice.
No, it wasn't that much time to practice. But I it was just barely enough time. I mean, the second part that was harder was a bit of a struggle because it didn't have a tempo marking on it, and so I kind of got it up as fast as I could. Um, and then when I got in the day, it was even faster than that, and I heard like the metronome in my ears, and I thought I was gonna die. And I kind of I kind
Oh
of
my god.
fell on my face first couple takes, but once I kind of got in the mode and the adrenaline cooled down, then we got some good takes in. So
It is so fast. Okay, so wait. Uh which one did you record first, you're saying?
the faster one
The
during that day, yeah. So it was like
the
we did
middle
one
part.
session, yeah, that comes at the end, and
Yeah.
then after lunch we recorded the Latin
The
part.
bookends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cuz the song structure is like, is it ABA basically?
I'd have to go back
Like it
and double
starts
check.
it starts with that,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Yep.
also ends with that, I think. And then in the middle is that swing section.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the swing section is inspired by Artie Shaw, right?
Yeah. So what John Williams told me was that his vision was like if there was this distant alien world and there's like these little aliens and they somehow found like a score of something Artie Shaw wrote, and
Famous jazz
they
clarinetist, right?
yeah, and so they like crawl out from under a rock and they have whatever weird alien makeshift instruments they can find, and they're like interpreting the Artie Shaw score via whatever they can do as aliens.
That is really interesting insight because I think a lot of people, when we watch the Canto Bight scene and hear the music, to a lot of people, it sounds very like earthly. Some people don't like it because it's so like this is like Earth almost. It's not
Mm-hmm.
Star Warsy, but some people love that. I love it, but it is very like the Canto Bight scenes in particular. Just have they have like jazz. There's like that moment with the lounge piano playing. There's like
Mm-hmm.
people enjoying classical music.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very like high society earthling type of thing. So it
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's interesting to hear that that pretty much was his vision. Like
He tried to make
aliens
it
find a
weird.
score, and
Yeah, he tried to make it weird. So on that day, it was basically like kind of like a jazz big band amount of musicians, and then there were like five of us percussionists, I think, something like that.
oh, so the
And
normal orchestra didn't record with you.
no, no, uh-uh.
It was like
So
a
yeah,
separate.
the part in the beginning, this orchestra part, they did that another time, and then so that day was like just for the Latin cue and the jazz cue.
Wow, like this was a such an isolated, unique like section of the score that took its whole other
Oh
production
yeah,
team.
yeah, because it's totally different than anything else, you know. So basically, they did a bunch of stuff to make it weird. The horn players had a bunch of weird mutes, and they even had like kazoo mutes and stuff that they were putting in some of their horns. I think there were some parts where some of the woodwind players were just straight up playing kazoo, and they had like this old tack piano, and then like I think a prepared piano a little bit, and then there was a guy who was playing mandolin and a bunch of other small little instruments like that, and he had it all like detuned and like messed with so that it sounded like all funky and off. And the bass player had all these effects on his bass that kind of made it all like wow 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 wow, kind of like this weird wompy kind of alien sound. And
Yeah,
then there was
yep,
like
yep.
a whole smattering of percussion stuff that they had there, and some real legends playing. Paulinho de Costa is a Brazilian guy who's played on like everything, and he had like this whole setup where he has like all these like little tiny like little wood blocks and all little miniature bells and all this stuff, and he plays like these kind of cool tiny little setups. Alex Acuna was there,
All
well
percussionists.
known Peruvian Latin percussionist. Harvey Mason was playing some drum set and some shaker. He played like a bunch of the Herbie Hancock stuff. He's super well known jazz fusion guy. And then Alan Estes, legend studio percussionist, and then Jerry Williams, John Williams' brother, was also
Timpani, right?
playing. That was
Oh,
Don Williams,
oh my,
also his brother.
he has two brothers that played.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, so what does Jerry play?
Jerry was playing percussion, so he was playing like chromatic cowbells and like
Oh, yeah,
scratcher
normal
and
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, totally normal stuff. So we were kind of in this like big line in the back, all the percussionists with like all these, you know, I was just playing steel pan, but they had all these, you know, variety of different percussion instruments. And then to my saving grace, the piano player was also he had a synth keyboard that he had a really good steel pan VST that he was using. So he was like my safety net because
Virtual instrument.
yeah, I think that I told John Williams it's like, hey, just write whatever. And I think that he was like, well, we don't know if this is possible to play on steel pan or if he can do it, so we'll have a guy playing it on keyboard like just in case. So that was kind of nice to have someone else playing with me. I think played with a couple horn players too when we were tracking it. Um, so yeah, it was just kind of a whole bunch of different things that they kind of threw together. But it was really cool to see the process because it was definitely there was a lot of room for interpretation in the percussion. So they would kind of like just go for it, and then it kind of stop and be like, "Well, I don't know, what about this?" Da da da, and then they would go and have a little meeting in the control room, and John Williams and Polino de Costa were just like, "Oh, I love you. No, I love you. Let's do this. Okay, great." And then they would go back and try something a little different, and it was really cool.
That sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds not like a normal orchestral session at all.
Yeah, no, no, no. It was because, like I said, it was a much smaller group, and I think that this was kind of a place where there was more creative leeway probably than anywhere else in the score.
Do you think
And it
John
was
Williams
supposed
was
to be
having
weird.
fun?
You know, they were getting weird. They were trying to make it weird, and I think it worked.
I I absolutely love this track. I mean, it's just so fun. It's
Yeah.
so different and it's so fun and energetic, and it feels like not in a sterile way, but of course that's who knows what other people think. But I just love it. Was John Williams having fun? Do you think?
Oh yeah, he seemed like he was having a great time, and he wasn't conducting that day either because this didn't really. I mean, everything was just really straight.
It's like a
So
jam.
yeah, so they had another guy who was conducting. He was just kind of like doing his thing, and John Williams just kind of in the booth, kind of just commenting the whole time, and then kind of come out and take a break and talk and et cetera, et cetera. So
Oh, that's so fun. Okay, I have this video, so let me.
okay, cool. Let's check it out.
Okay, so this is the performance, the steel
This is at Panorama. This is the
Panorama.
big competition. Group's called Phase 2, and
And what are we
it's
looking and listening for? Just
to
the
look so to see all the different sizes of instruments, and when you're listening to this to realize that this is all acoustic. This is 100% acoustic, unamplified instruments being played is what you're hearing.
Okay, cool. So those listening, I'll put a link to this in the show notes because it's just on YouTube. But you can hear
Yeah.
the acousticness of it in a second.
The Lydian singers, the tuners of the band. The tuner of the band is Bertrand Kelman. The band is led by Ronnie Howard. And the manager of the band is Errol Skerritt. The tune is arranged by Len Bugsy Shah.
Okay, there's a lot of people
Ladies and
lined
gentlemen,
up
from
with
Hamilton
like
Street in Woodbrook, playing for you the Archbishop
steel.
of Pan, Petrotrin Phase 2, Pan Groove.
No amplifiers. I don't hear anything. The suspense. What? What? Oh my God.
So you can see those big bass cans down there.
Okay. This like sounds like enormous synthesizers everywhere. Wow, okay. I forgot that we were recording for a second because I'm just watching. Okay. Wow. That was not what I expected to hear when I clicked on that at all. No microphones, no plugging in to amps at all. Like that was all acoustic. That my mind's a little bit blown. Okay. That is very, very cool. What made you want to play the steel pan drums in the first place?
I really just was lucky in that Humboldt State University is a college in my hometown that I decided I wanted to go to when I graduated from high school. And at the time, you know, I'd been playing drums since I was a kid, and music was like the only thing that was super interesting to me at the time. So I thought, all right, well, I'm going to go and I'm just going to do music and I'm just going to go for it. And I was super lucky that they had an amazing percussion department and an incredible teacher, Eugene Novotny. And Eugene had discovered the steel pan when he was 17 or so. And so he had spent years going to Trinidad, transcribing these songs, bringing them back, starting a band. So we had a band at Humboldt State of 30 odd people. That's kind of a mini version of kind of what you're seeing there. So I just was kind of thrown into it. It was an ensemble and it was the thing to do. And so I played in it all through college, and then after that, I was really inspired by a guy named Teague, who's probably the world's kind of foremost virtuoso on steel pan, and he's Trinidadian, and he has a really strong classical background, but so he teaches at Northern Illinois University, and so at the time I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll go study with him, and then it seemed like that wasn't going to work out, and then I was like, well, where else can I go? And my teacher said you should go to Long Beach. They have a steel band there, and he had a long time connection with the school, so it just kind of kept rolling. And I went to Long Beach and played, and then I led the kind of beginning band there for a while, and then actually during COVID was leading the band, which it was pretty small at the time, but it's kind of kept evolving for me, and and then I kind of started to get more gigs, playing like solo gigs and playing with the other steel panists in Southern California, and so it's just kind of been a long evolution from you just kind of got thrown into it at Humboldt State University.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I actually I want to go back to the recording process for a second because
hmm
I forgot someone specifically asked. I'm always happy to hear more about the studio gear and the recording process. How was
hmm
this mic'd?
They had two large diaphragm condensers over each pan, and
Oh.
they basically, they had all the horn players and everything kind of in the front, and then they had like this big partition
hmm
that all the percussionists were behind, and then another kind of little side partition next to me, so I was kind of in a little corner partition in the back.
And the partition was for sound bleed.
hmm
Okay.
And this was in the Barbara Streisand recording room at what is now Sony.
Sony. Okay. So same place that
Yeah,
the orchestra recorded.
yeah. hmm
Could you see the people around you through the partitions?
Yes, I think they were clear. Yeah.
Recording for me, like, or at least big recording sessions, there's always so many mics around, and it's like when they're adjusting the mics, you have to be like in the right position for when you're about to play because
hmm
if you have mics surrounding everything, then once you start playing, it's kind of hard to move.
They had a lot of space that day because there wasn't, a lot of people. It's a big room, so it wasn't too big of a deal. Um, the mics weren't really like in the way or that much of a factor, really.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like
hmm
a great gig. Um,
Yeah, it was. I mean, extremely nerve wracking initially. Luckily, they did the hard part first, and then I just like died, and then got it done, and then it was like, okay, I'm cool. And then we had lunch, and then the easier part in the afternoon. So I was just like cruising at that point.
that's great. If you had to describe, I mean, not if you had to, I mean, it's probably pretty obvious, but not to me. What would you say the style of this track is? Because it goes through a few different styles. So if you were to pigeonhole it into,
hmm
yeah, like there's a swing part and a whatever, but if,
Yeah.
yeah, can you help direct our ears to something more specific?
Yeah. So it's for the Latin part, he kind of mixes a couple different things together. He kind of mixes and again, some of the groove was kind of left up to the percussionists to interpret. They didn't have like some parts were written out, but I think a lot of it, for especially for like Paulinho and Alex, it was kind of like, okay, what'd you bring? This is what I'm thinking. Okay, work out a groove, guys. Okay, cool, that sounds good. Hey, can we try this? So what it ended up being was like kind of a Brazilian sort of samba vibe, but then the way that he was writing parts, like my part was kind of almost like a Montuno style, like
Montuno.
kind of like a salsa, kind of like what a salsa piano player would play rhythm wise.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So you kind of have this mix of kind of like salsa vibe, Brazilian samba vibe, kind of just generic Latin groove sort of thing. So it's kind of a fusion thing of all that stuff getting put together and with a lot of different creative instruments being used in the process.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot of instruments normally used in samba. And then
hmm
there's that one quote from who is it? What's that quote? This like
Oh yeah, that's like from
it's a few bars from
Brazil. What's
Aqua.
that song?
It's on the tip of my tongue because I've
I know what you mean.
Aqualera. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the name.
Oh, it's like
Mm-hmm.
and it's just that little section. And if you actually watch the credits at the end of the movie, it says Aquilera de Brazil,
Oh, really?
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I mean, I should have had this memorized, but I forgot. It's used in a movie that I just haven't seen. But
Oh, okay.
there's so many references. There's so many film references in the Canto Bight scene, both musically and cinematically, or
Mm-hmm.
with the cinematography.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that he included that cue. I mean, I don't know if they had to pay royalties on that, but there certainly is a credit in the film,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know that.
and it certainly is like, even though I didn't know the name of it, hearing that I know that from somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's, and then we get to a swing section, and that's the
Mhm.
hard part for you.
Yep, 1930s swing gone wrong.
And it says that on the
Mm-hmm.
on the
On the cue, yeah.
on the cue. That's funny. It's always interesting to see what the tempo like what the markings are on the score, what the tempo says.
Yeah, there was a specific tempo marking. It was like 120 or whatever for the Latin one, but then it just said 1930s swing gone wrong for the other one.
Yeah, with no tempo marking, so
No tempo marking.
no way to know for sure how fast to prepare it.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is in some ways a tribute to R.T. Shore, right?
Yeah, it's
Who
kind
is
of
that?
like I'm not exactly sure. I need to look that up. We should have fact checked that one first.
I'll fact. It's all right. It's all right.
Well, the next, I mean, your next 5 minutes will include that chunk, won't it? So you can
Yeah.
address it then, I
True.
guess.
True. I have another
Mhm.
chance. I have another chance.
Yeah.
And then it goes back, and that's it. Well, how do you feel about your involvement in the Canto Bight scene, this controversial scene?
I mean, I feel great. I had a good time. You know, I know that there's a lot of varied opinions about the quality of the scene and its relevance, and is it good, is it bad, is it et cetera, et cetera. I will say though that in preparation for this, I did a little searching online in the Star Wars fandom, because people like to hate on that. And so I always like to find the one person who comes up with like the good redeeming rationale that like justifies the thing that everybody hates on. So one thing that I read that I like was that somebody said that the scene is important and necessary because it is a turning point for Finn, where they make the argument that before that he's kind of just like looking out for himself, he's kind of just doing his thing, he's kind of just on his mission, and that's like a turning point where all of a sudden he becomes like emotionally invested in the greater cause, you know, and it kind of he goes from just being like self-centered to then like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna like do the right thing or fight for the good guys, I guess you could say.
I think
So
that's probably true in many cases. I think that's true. It's sort of his Han Solo moment of, okay,
yeah.
fine, yeah, okay, I'm part of the resistance. Like before, he's trying to desert,
Mhm.
but now he's
Yeah.
now he's in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very true. On Star Wars Minute podcast, our companion podcast, there on a recent episode, their guest was someone who had like, did he have a line? I don't know if he had. I can't remember if he had a line, but he was like a friend of Ryan Johnson's and had a little cameo
Mhm.
in one part. And
Mhm.
so Alex and Pete were asking if he then became obsessed with that character, and then if he wanted to know everything about that character, because I guess Pete has one of the hosts of that show has a comic book character named after him in the Star Wars, like
Hmm.
some tiny bit character, and because of that association, he wants to know everything. He's like invested in that character storyline. Like, if anything else happens to that character, that most people have no idea who it is.
Yeah, right.
So, you being part of the Canto Bight, this Canto Bight scene, did you want to know everything about Canto Bight after this?
I mean, I wouldn't say everything. like I said to my saving grace, my mom thought it was a good idea to buy me the Canto Bight book for Christmas. She's like, "Oh, Tyler, that's the book. That's the song you played on." So I was like, "All right, I'll read it." And then I was like, "Oh, this is actually kind of entertaining. This is kind of cool to get
So you
the,
did read the
you
Canto
know,
Bight book.
I
Not many
I read the
people can
book.
say they have.
That's right. And it's got some good little stories. And like I said, it's kind of cool because it takes you kind of beyond the veneer. It's a pretty short scene as it is, and there's obviously a lot of like rich stories and ideas and characters that could exist in that world. So it was
Yeah.
kind of cool to see like the people in the bottom, like the inner workings of the people who are actually just like running the place and cleaning things up and giving massages and driving people around, all the way to like, oh, here's this super rich opulent person, and they go to like a bar where the wall spits out the right kind of gas that you want, and the humidity and temperature adjust to whatever you need, and it's like the finest rare bottles of alcohol that you would like to drink based on the planet that you're from,
One of the first aliens
etc.
we see in the scene is actually that nightclub owner. Is
Mhm.
Ubiala Gil,
Mhm.
is the one on the balcony.
Yeah.
One of those, yeah, a true Canto Bight person. Let's just
Mhm.
say,
Canto Bight Elite.
yes, indeed. She really
Mhm.
she scares me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, don't want to be on her bad side. Um, okay, so let me transition into the stuff that happens before that, just so
Mhm.
we get a sense. Okay, yeah, a lot happens before that. Okay, so um, before we arrive at Canto Bight, because that's the end of the 5 minutes, it's the final minute, we have Rey, a great moment with Rey turning. She's not like turning to the dark side, but she's immediately called to the dark side on the island. And we see the shot of the like hole in the island, and the music is all scary. And then we have the reverse shot of the water spurting up, which was, I think, done with just by reversing that footage of splashing, like dumping water and reversing it so it goes up. Um, and the music, the sound design and music are mixed in a really ominous way that um, really preferences the sound design toward the end. Like I notice in that scene, the dial on Rey's like breathing is turned up really high. Like you can hear music, but you can also hear like her panting and like and breath and just vulnerability higher in the I guess in the sound level hierarchy. And then after that, we have is this when we have the force connection? Where are all my notes? During the force connection, or no, we have Kylo Ren quote as Luke tells Rey that he's seen someone with this power before, and well, we know that that was Kylo Ren, and he's kind of scared of seeing that much raw power. So we hear Kylo Ren's theme, and then we hear the resistance theme, or one of the resistance themes, or one of the tension themes, but not the resistance march. Not that one. A different one, and this is when we're on the Radis with Connix and Poe, and they're sneaking around and everything. And then when we have the force connection between Rey and Kylo, I love the sound design in this part. Visually, we see on Rey's end there's like water dripping, and on Kylo's end there's, I don't know what it's called, electric electric shards, electricity rain, electric rain falling. Um, and we hear a shot, we hear the rain and we hear the electricity doing its thing, and they really parallel each other both sonically and visually. And while he's talking, well, the first thing we hear after the water falling and the electricity falling is right after one another. We hear Kylo stomp and then Rey take a breath. And it's sort of like and that's when like the vacuum starts. Like we've talked about how when they're having their force connection, it's like the vacuum of sound where you hear nothing else except their voices really loud, and there's a little bit of like pre-delay, I think, and there's like a little bit of there's some sound treatment, but it's the type of sound treatment that makes you feel like you're being suffocated in a vacuum and it's just them existing. So I just think it's a very delicate detail, and I love that. One final sound design thing is when the porgs are ripping the leather or fabric off of the seats. I didn't realize until I listened to that with headphones or watched it with headphones how like loud the sound of them like ripping into that seat is. But if you haven't noticed that, highly recommend you go back and check that out. Tyler, anything to add?
Yeah, just those little pork squawks right there. They come through loud and clear.
Oh yeah, they really do. I swear, now when I'm just like walking around, and I think this is the time of the year where I don't know, I've seen a lot of birds like flying, and some of them, like anytime birds start squawking, I just am like, porgs. All right.
Man, yeah. I think that's about. Let's see. Is there anything else? Any little tidbits?
Did anything surprise you about the process?
I mean, nothing comes to mind. I mean, this was my first time doing anything like that, so I was kind of just like,
Yeah, this is your baseline now for film.
Yeah,
recording.
I had some baseline expectations, but there wasn't anything. I mean, there were some just little moments that I won't go into here and there that surprised me a little bit, but no, there wasn't anything that was totally shocking. I mean, overall, I will say that like everybody was extremely nice, and John Williams was like this very nice, like old grandfatherly kind of vibe, and all the other percussionists were very supportive and super cool, and they were very welcoming, and it was like a semi casual kind of vibe, except when there were some moments where things weren't quite happening right, and John Williams would calmly berate people, and then things, they would kind of shape up a little bit.
Like playing things wrong or like misbehaving?
No, like horn players struggling to nail some certain syncopated patterns, that kind of stuff.
Oh, being called out by the music director is like, it's always a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Brings you back to youth orchestra days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, just this stand. How about you just?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, play it by yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it went pretty smooth that day. I mean, it was like things were kind of ahead of schedule. Things were rolling. Things were going good. So,
is the version we hear on the soundtrack the same as the version in the film, or did you record separately?
No, they kind of chop it up a bit. There's some little spots that aren't there.
Oh.
I think in the film.
But that are on the track.
Where
I'm coming out with this question is...
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The track is different. I have to double check, but I think so.
Okay.
Because, yeah, it kind of gets abbreviated and then chopped and faded in the movie.
But that was done in post-production?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you record a picture at all for this, or was this really kind of just no picture? Oh, no. I guess no one recorded a picture for this score, but...
Well,
did the conductor see?
There actually were some film people there. They were working on a documentary, and there actually is a couple seconds. There's actually it's in, where is it? It's in a random place. It's like not even on the DVD. It's like this online like VR extra feature thing.
Oh, the 360. Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's like the recording the score 360 VR experience. I think it's on YouTube
Yeah,
actually, but you need VR.
it
You
is.
need
Yeah,
VR glasses.
yeah. I mean, you don't totally need them. There's a way you can select it to not. But
Yeah.
there's actually a split. It's like half a second of me behind it like pans and it's just like me behind the steel drum for like a split second in there. And there's a couple other shots I think from that day. But they were kind of they were low key, kind of on the side.
Fame. When I talked to the cellist or one of the cellists who played,
Hmm.
she said that for a lot of the cues, like they would record one version to be used in the film and then another version for the soundtrack where John would just
Mm.
not have to look at the picture and could just take more liberties instead of staying to the
Yeah.
picture. But it sounds like that wasn't so much of an issue in this song.
No, because the time is totally fixed for this. There's not any tempo fluctuation anywhere. So it
True.
doesn't really require any adjustment. It was just like two cues, read it top to bottom. It all is straight. I mean, I was cool because I got to hang out on the day when I met with him before the recording session when they were recording with the whole orchestra. And he was conducting that day. And he was going from the movie. And so they were kind of like, flying by the seat of their pants, no metronome in their ears or anything. So there was just like a lot of people adjusting and moving to make the whole thing work. So I was just like sitting way in the back watching the percussionists do their thing. So that was kind of a cool experience to just see what the vibe was like. But it was much, much different vibe when I actually went to record on that day just because it was such a smaller group. And
You did have a click track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they had done is they had pre-recorded the bass and I think like some other kind of rhythmic part. And so they kind of started out where it was like me and the piano player playing the steel pan VST and then like a couple horn players. And we kind of would play some melodies over the top of the bass line and the click track. And then they would kind of like add more percussion. And then they were kind of like building the whole thing up piece by piece. So it wasn't like everybody was playing all at once. It was very sectioned out the way they did it.
Yeah, I'm to make this distinction. Um, what Tyler is basically saying is this: there's no like tempo changes within this track that aren't accounted for in the structure of the track. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically, like when conducting the more traditional orchestral cues, there is maybe a suggested tempo or a tempo that one aspires to keep at, but since John Williams doesn't actually conduct to a click track, it's sort of like you can start out by doing 60 beats per minute in your head, but in real life you're probably going to get a little bit off as you conduct that, and it's just a difference. Like here it's more like if you're at BPM, what's the first part? 120? BPM
I think so.
120. Then you can actually like just mathematically calculate if you're at 120 beats per minute. Every minute you're going to have 120 beats of music pass by, and you can time that much more easily. So, yeah, that's all that is.
Yeah, it was
It's all
funny because
math.
when I first heard the click going, and I was like, "Huh, this click's like pretty fast. Like that can't be like the tempo for this cue. They must have that for something else." And then I heard the bass line, and I was like, "Okay, here we go."
Is this the? It sounds like a Roger Rabbit bass line. Like Roger
right,
Rabbit
like,
cartoon
bah, bah, bah,
spin.
bah. It's kind of like it's like a 1950s like rock kind of thing, Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like jailhouse rock or something like that.
Yeah. It's fun. All right. Well, I think we've exhausted this topic. And I so appreciate you sharing all your insider info.
Yeah, my
your
pleasure.
insight. It's really fun to hear about that. And I feel like I learned so much about the steel pan drums in this past hour. Wow.
There's a lot to them.
That clip sort of blew my mind a little bit. Where can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram, Tyler Hunt Percussion.
Nice.
And I got some old videos on YouTube. I'll probably be coming out with a lot of new content this year.
Sweet.
And yeah,
Do you write music too?
a little bit here and there. You know, usually I kind of do more with other people, but I do kind of have some of my own stuff deep in the works that one day will surface.
What's your favorite instrument to play?
You know, I kind of get ADD with instruments, and I'll get tired of one, and then I want to go do something else. So I'll play steel pan for a while, and then I'll be like, "This is boring. I'm going to play drum set." And I'll be
So
like, "This is
being a
boring."
percussionist is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you play the
So
perfect instrument for that then.
yeah, exactly. It's a blessing and a curse, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of variety.
Lots of gear.
Lots of gear. Oh, I know that struggle. And I
Yes.
can't even yeah.
Garage is full.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you're listening to this, what are your favorite sound-related moments in The Last Jedi? And also, what did you know about steel pan drums? Am I the only one who had all these questions about what they look like? I'm curious if you have experiences with steel pan drums listening, or if you have any more follow-up questions. Maybe I can ask Tyler and share the answers with you. Feel free to send me an email at podcast@starwarsmusicminute.com. Tweet at me at, where am I? Chrysanthi Tan or Star Wars Museman. There's also a link in the show notes if you want to submit an anonymous question. And I believe that is it. Next week, we're doing minutes 56 through 60. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the show. And see you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.